I'd like to tell you a story and I would like to ask you two questions. Now, the thing which prompted these two things is a survey recently conducted by the Musicians Union in the UK. As its name suggests, it's a union for musicians, professional musicians, which just means people who make money from their music. And 70% of the people surveyed considered themselves performers. So by that I'm assuming that the majority were performing, gigging musicians, singer-songwriters, working in clubs, working in bands, cover bands, playing at weddings and parties and the like. Now there is a whole load of information in this survey which you might find interesting. I shall leave two links below. The first is a link to a Sound on Sound article, that is Sound on Sound magazine. It's an audio recording magazine, well worth checking out if you're not familiar with it already, and that sort of summarises some of the salient points, and I will also leave a link to the report so you can go through it yourself in more detail. So I'm only going to concentrate on one aspect of the report, and that is probably the thing which is second most dearest to most musicians' hearts, and that is money. We need money to buy the gear to make our music, and if we are professional musicians, then we need money to put a roof over our head and food on the table. So the first interesting statistic, and I'm sure you will not be surprised by this, is that most musicians earn far less than the average wage in the UK. Now, I'm not going to go into the absolute details. There are a couple of categories and situations. You can read these if you want to in the report. 43% of respondents said they earn less than £14,000 a year. Now, I know in some jobs that may seem like a reasonable amount of money, but it is about 2 to 2.5 times less than the UK average salary. 23% said they do not earn enough money to support themselves and their families. 17% said they were in debt. I've no idea what the national average of the number of people in debt in the UK is, but I would not be at all surprised to find it was far, far higher than 17%. However, being in debt is not a good thing, and obviously a lot of musicians are. Now, the survey obviously dug into this a little bit more, and it reported that 30% of musicians with mental health conditions are also in debt, and around 28% of black musicians in the UK were also in debt. So at first glance, not a particularly encouraging report. Looking at these results, you would probably not want to encourage your son or daughter to be a musician. So let me tell you the story. I was a gigging musician, and I am going way back. So I had done a gig and went to get paid, and as the man was handing over the money, he was muttering and grumbling, and he said, "That's not bad money for a couple hours work, is it?" That probably didn't sound at all like him, but that's my best grumbly voice. And at the time, I think I was getting paid, I can't remember exactly, maybe around £20, maybe £25. And to be fair, this was quite a good pay for a gigging musician at the time. If I did 3 gigs a week, that was reasonable pay, and I could just about exist on that. I was living at home at the time, so that certainly helped. And to be correct, the gigs generally lasted 3 hours, not 2. Still, for 3 hours of work, it was pretty good pay. So when he said that to me, I replied, "Well, you could do the next one." And of course he went away muttering and grumbling, not a happy bunny at all. And of course the point of just to press this home, yes, for 2 or 3 hours work, this was pretty good pay, but that did not take into account the countless hours and years of practice and learning that went into being able to do those 2 or 3 hours. So I don't think he realised that, or he never thought about it. Perhaps he just thought I was naturally gifted. But reading this survey, I thought of 2 things, and 2 questions in fact. The first was, do we as musicians undervalue our skills and abilities and our worth? I do believe there is an abundance of musicians around. And if one musician doesn't want to do a job at a particular fee, there are probably a dozen queuing up behind him waiting to jump into his shoes. So competition is good for the market, but not necessarily good for the individual. But that was one thought, so that's my first question. Do you think musicians undervalue themselves? And you probably know what the second question is, coming right up. Does society undervalue musicians? Now, in a sense, we don't do anything practical. We don't build roads. We don't fix arms if they get broken. We don't repair leaky taps. But still, I think the vast majority of people in the general population would agree that musicians and music play a vital part in their day-to-day lives. However, since it's not overtly practical, I think it's easy for people, or some people at any rate, to undervalue the worth of a musician. Now, although the survey took place in the UK, my gut feeling is that similar results would be shown in Europe, in America, in Australia, in the West. So, what do you think? Do musicians undervalue themselves? Does society undervalue musicians? And have you had any personal experience of either of these? I think these are important questions for music and musicians. You will undoubtedly be aware that musicians have always seemed to get the short end of the stick thanks to publishing companies and now streaming companies. So please do let me know what you think. And if you found this interesting and enjoyed this video, I think you will enjoy these videos as well. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again in the next video very soon.